However, AMFT have expressed a lot of frustrations to the folks at AMFT about the fact that we don't always get parity for our membership dollars compared to our American cousins. So for example, if you take your Family Therapy magazine and flip through the member benefit page at the back, you'll see that some of those things don't come across the border, and yet we are full fee-paying members. Or some services, you know, we just can't access here, that kind of thing. Or sometimes they make a plan with unintended consequences for Canadian members, and sometimes those are very serious. You may remember roughly, I think it was about 5 years ago, they had to do kind of an emergency vote of all the members because they had accidentally drafted bylaw revisions that would have made all of the Canadian members who weren't licensed MFTs no longer, I believe it was no longer clinical fellows. I think I'm getting this wrong. But how they redrafted their bylaws, they hadn't taken into account the impact on Canadian members. So that's the most drastic example. And but I think sometimes what happens is because the Canadian context may not be very well understood, that decisions are made and the consequences for this context sometimes are become aware after the fact, after something has happened that might be detrimental for Canadians. Okay, so where can I find more information to inform my vote? So over the next months, the way that AMFT is going to be disseminating their information and the recommendations of the Division Affairs Steering Committee are going to be through Family Therapy e-News, which is the emailed bulletin that AMFT sends out. Also Family Therapy magazine for those of you who prefer sort of hard copy things. And I do encourage you to stay on top of this issue and read all your stuff from AMFT. I know sometimes the email boxes get full and we sort of delete things, but do read what's going on. It's really, there's a lot happening. And because some things haven't been defined yet and they're kind of working on it, to be an informed voter, I don't think we know everything at this point to be able to say, this is what we know now to make your vote. I think they are going to be developing some things in the months ahead. So at OMFT, we'll be informing you and e-blasting things, but it requires you to read your email and read your e-blast from us too as well. So this is a bit of a dense slide, but AMFT is going to be giving a lot of information to divisions. And division boards have a lot of decisions to make over and above just members about how they're going to vote. So there's a number of pieces that are in development right now that AMFT has promised to roll out in the months ahead. So some of them are separating fact and myth, inequality among divisions, finances, local advocacy, and you can read the titles of the things they're preparing to assist divisions to lead during this time of transition. Next steps. I put these graphics in too, I was really proud of them. Okay, so what are the next steps? So from now until the spring, as I just mentioned, the AMFT is going to be giving out lots of information via Therapy News and the magazine. And we'll be passing that information along as best we can. As soon as we receive it, we'll make sure it gets out to you as well and updating our website. Ooh, I think I forgot something there. The board will finalize and put out to the membership the marked up version of the bylaws. So basically what it sounds like what the membership will be ratifying is revised bylaws. Within the bylaws will contain this information about no more divisions and the other things about SIGs and so on. Okay. So there is a task force that AMFT has created. And this task force is looking at how to do all this and how to do it all legally, because kind of unraveling an association structure, there's lots of things to consider. So they have their own legal team at the AMFT led by Roger Smith, and they have a big group that's saying how, just to make sure this is all above board and all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. Let's see. So March to May, again, when you receive your ballots for AMFT elections in the mail, that's when they are going to be mailing out as well the marked up bylaws for your vote. And then the voting will take place between May and August. Okay. And so finally, if you have a question, if you have looked at our resources, if you've looked over this presentation, and by the way, we're going to be making this available on the OMFT website, so you can review it later, or if you have people or friends who weren't able to come and they want to see it, it's going to be on the website for you, and it's being filmed as well. But you can also contact the restructuring at amft.com. And the interesting thing is when you, at least the ones that we've sent out or I've been copied on, the response comes right from Tracy Todd, the executive director. So I don't know how long he's going to be personally answering these, but if you send it out in the next while, you'll probably actually get a personal response from Tracy Todd, which is kind of neat. So it might be neat to sort of send him lots of questions. Okay, and so now I will take your questions. Diane Marshall, you have your hand up first.
Would our RMFT association be considered a C?
So Diane asked, will the RMFT Association, meaning the Canadian Registry, now called the Canadian Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, be considered a SIG? AMFT would love that, and that's what was suggested to me by Michael Chafin. And I don't think it's not really for AMFT to decide that. It's the Canadian Association has its own bylaws, its own voting structure. So AMFT can hope for that, but that's up to the Canadian Association. And the voting members of the CMFT are the folks that sit around that board table, which at this point are the Canadian division leaders of the AMFT. Is that confusing?
No, I just want to know, would that be then a parallel to, say, the Medical Association, the Canadian Medical Association, CMA? Would it make a parallel for us in Canada to have the what did you call it?
CAMFT.
Okay.
Okay, so Diane's asking could the CMFT be some kind of parallel association, just like the American Medical Association, there's a CMA. Could it be like a national representative body? It could be. I mean, it would take a lot, it would require a lot of things to happen for division. The division would have to say, we're gonna go rogue, we're gonna disassociate ourselves from AMFT, and then we would have to organize ourselves to, it would require bylaw changes of a division to become independent, separate from AMFT, and bylaw changes would have to happen at the CMFT. So, and it is possible, it would be like a multi-stage process, I would assume that would take a few years. Yeah, Neil.
In your membership on the DASC, has any consideration of dissolving AMFT and distributing equally the remaining funds to all current divisions? Been considered.
So Neil asked, as part of the DASC, was it looked at to dissolve the AMFT and keep the divisions? And interestingly enough, Neil, it wasn't, and it was noticed and remarked upon very loudly that it wasn't by the people, myself included, on the DASC, that how it appeared was that there was three options given for us to entertain. One kind of like this option, like a so-so option in my opinion, and two absolutely not feasible options. It's kind of like there's two turkey options and like the obvious option that you have to choose was how it felt. So again, this is strictly my opinion, and I'm not representing anyone other than my own opinion as I say this. And a lot of people in the room were upset by the fact that the process focused all the requirement for change at the division level, which sets this idea up that the central is not really doing anything other than trying its best and doing fairly well, if only the divisions would get their act together, that kind of thing. So that there was a bit of, in fact, quite a lot of bad feeling about that. At the moment, there is a part on the AMFT website called the community, where there's a whole bunch of different blogs that one can write to. One of them is a division leader's blog, and it has lit up like a Christmas tree, and I would say that 99% of the comments and blogs that are being circulated are negative and quite defensive, and with these kind of remarks and questions. Yes?
So I've really appreciated AMFT as my professional home, and I've been in the last number of years feeling like, as I read the changes that they're introducing in the emails, it seems like they're tightening how people can become members. So for people who haven't done their training at an AMFT-approved education institution like the University of Guelph or somewhere in the United States, it's getting harder and harder to become a clinical fellow because you have to get more and more good courses in the university. And that may be relevant in the United States, but in Canada, we want to maintain high quality education, but we need more people, right? And it's interesting to hear that there's this concern with the demographics when they've on purpose been tightening who can join the club, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is there a sense of an irony there, or something?
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't read your name tag. What's your first name? Jonathan, thank you. So this is a comment for the most part with an awesome question at the end about it seems that the AMFT is tightening up how one can become a clinical fellow, especially in Canada. We have a very limited number of COAMFT programs. So most people would do an evaluative track to become a clinical fellow. Harder to find courses, harder to find programs, and AMFT tightening up what can be a qualifying program. At the very same time, they're saying we want to improve membership, especially for younger folks. And the question was, is there an irony or an expressed irony about that? And yeah, I think it's really ironic. Yeah.
I also have the sense that Dorothy Bowes is not necessarily the friend of Canadians. I don't know if other people have contact.
So, just for folks in the room, yeah. So, I will respond diplomatically, and I will rephrase, or I will just sort of summarize the comment that there's been some challenges with Canadian members having their questions about membership, how to get things approved, and in a timely way, in a friendly way, or at all. And we've received at least, I'm going to look for, see if Sharon's going to nod her head. I would say most of the complaints I had when I was president were about service, and particularly for people looking for approvals from that department of AMFT. Oh, lots of nodding heads. And I've had a lot of conference calls trying to address this problem. I remember once I was on a trip to Mexico with my family on the balcony, and I had been present for all of like a day, and I had Michael Bowers, Tracy Todd, the person you said, and some other folks. And if Larry Beach is in the room, he was on that call. And Larry, do you remember that call? Larry was so hot under the collar. I'd never seen anything like it. And Ed Santana at the time was madly texting me like, oh my gosh, Larry Beach is just, and I just want you to know, lots of people go to bat and come out of their shell in pretty spectacular ways to defend the members and to attempt to rectify this. And so this has been one of the concerns about, so if this has been a challenge now, what's this going to look like in a more centralized environment? So I understand your concern. Yes, please.
Will the executive kind of come up with a collective recommendation for us as an Ontario response to this?
I'm not sure. So a lot of this stuff is fairly new to the executive.
Right.
And I think the idea is that we can highlight, as we have here, that there may be some specific risks that, the AMFT hasn't been rolling out, what are the potential risks. I think they are interested in having people ratify it. So, we've tried to identify what we view as potential risks, but ultimately it has to be, each person is going to be voting independently.
What I mean is if it is ratified, that's got, as you just highlighted, the implications.
Right.
And as an association or as a division right now, we have 3 options to respond. So if we wait until August and they go, it's ratified, and then we go, what are we going to do?
Yeah, so I would say this is a hot issue, and I think supposing we got some information that comes down the pipe or some things that aren't defined yet become defined, we can pass the information, and I think, I can't speak for the whole board right now, but I think we could pass along if there is a special concern for Canadians or for Ontarians or for our division, that we might highlight that potential implication. You might also hear some things coming from the CAMFT, who, because the CMFT has independence from AMFT, they are less kind of at risk of offending or making their parent angry. So you could also, the CMFT is going to be rolling out information to Neil.
In the name of resiliency, Ontario has new laws for nonprofits, of which OAMFT is a registered nonprofit in the province of Ontario.
This sounds like a hard question. Keep going.
Not a question, it's a statement.
Okay.
We could continue if enough people agreed as a professional organization under the non-profit laws of Ontario, without any association with AMFT.
Yes, that's the rogue option.
Okay, and the rogue option does mean that then the membership has to decide whether or not they want to fund that.
Right. So Neil is highlighting, for those who couldn't hear him, that there would really be nothing preventing us from, under Ontario not-for-profit laws, saying we're going to cease our affiliation with the AMFT. It would require ratification of this membership of the OMFT. Yes, Carl.
So then, just a question more directed towards Neil. Did I hear correctly that if we followed that option, we have a chunk of startup money because we get to keep the funds that we have now?
Okay, I feel like there's kind of a revolution happening in the room. So I'll let you and Neil talk about that. Yes, Adam.
What would happen if the membership, like AMFT-wide, turns down this ratification? What's the implication of that?
I don't know. And that's a question that I haven't heard AMFT answer to any satisfaction yet. So what if this fails? Then what? And there has been a lot of money invested in this process. And so I'm really not sure.
Brenda, may I?
Yes, Larry.
May I say that for some years, we've been on the cusp of taking over control of credentialing to become RMFTs. It seems to me that's really important for us to do now, to modify the way in which one can become a CMFT, to meet what's available in terms of courses and supervision and so on here in Canada. So I think we need to get on with doing that. That's a very important one.
So Larry's just saying, I think many of you heard him, that he's saying that the RMFT credential needs to be detangled from an AMFT credential and needs to be under our own purview. And the CMFT, formerly the registry, is looking to do just that, so that our fate as Canadians isn't tied to AMFT. And that's not to say there would be any animosity, but just for the reasons you said, Larry. So I'm aware of time, or I should say I'm not aware of time. For those of you who are kind of in charge, am I just about out of time? How many minutes do we have left? Have I gone over? We are over time. I'm going to take 2 more questions from people who haven't answered a question yet, had a question yet, Diane.
I'd like to know what forum we will have before April to discuss this in Larry's point and the CAMFT's position again.
I'm not sure at this point. I would suggest that the OMFT board in its January meeting could address that. Sharon Ramsey.
I just want to let people know that the Canadian Association for Marriage and Family Therapy is preparing a survey that was used with another division in the States to solicit the opinion of Canadian members across the country. Because one of the things is that we can come to a meeting and get right? And righteously right. However, to be able to really consider and what direction so that the CMFT can have the majority of support to move in direction A and who knows, does require that when that survey comes out, we each take responsibility for filling it in. So that therefore you are giving clear messages to what perhaps you want to be a national organization leading us forward.
So just further to that comment, as Sharon said, there will be a survey coming out. The CMFT is putting that together. It's going to come through the divisions though. And Sharon and I got to see the results. I believe it was Washington State. Yeah. And that's a very active division. That's a division where it's a strong division. And we got to read the results and we got to read the comments. And there wasn't actually one neutral or one supportive of the restructuring. And I'm not saying I'm recommending that. I'm just saying that that division can now say, this is how our members feel. And I think there was a very large response rate. So if you feel strongly It's not for us to tell you how to vote, I don't think. I think we can, as I said, highlight risks and implications, but there will be a survey coming, and absolutely express your feelings there, because then we can do something with it, rather than kind of pull together a conference call. And I think we'll have a lot more, be able to, speak for you with some evidence. Okay, one more comment, please.
I've been a member of AMFTs for 40 years.
Wow.
And I want to tell you something, all of you younger people, when you get very involved, make it a point not to make it exclusive. I've been a member of the college from its beginning. And I find as soon as people get into something, they become so exclusive that it becomes actually non-productive. It doesn't allow, there should be people, my background is MSW, everyone should be a member of the college, of the association. Everyone who wants to practice marriage and family therapy, in my opinion, should be a member of the OMFT. But if we make it so hard, and we should really offer people courses, which I was so fortunate to get, that were within our ability to pay for, because when you're a younger professional, you have a lot of responsibility, and we are not a profession that make a lot of money to begin with. Then you will have more people join. But I think we forget that little exclusive club keeps going higher, becomes famous, wants to keep everybody out. It's non-productive. So mine is, please make it open. We are not the only smart people. There are a lot of brilliant people yet to come to make great changes.
Okay, well, I'm very happy to end this on the very wise comments of a longtime member who said we're not the only smart professionals in Ontario, and that's a good caution. So thank you very much for your attention and for your great questions.
And thank you everybody for your patience and for your participation. I'm sure that we could continue to go on. Brenda, I want to say thank you. At the end of a long day, difficult. If I could have your attention for one moment.